to pull back. So I ask you this, with everything that's going on, as big as it is, it's so easy to walk away. When I walk in Columbus, Ohio, and I see Ohio State University, and I see how big it is, and I see how many people go to those games, it just, I sit and wonder, I say, gosh, can we do anything? Is it worth even trying? And I understand when people say, you know, I just don't know if we can fight this beast, but I've got to be honest with you, I've seen bigger things changed, bigger and more important things, by the way, changed by fewer people in history. And I do think we need to address this because it is eroding, not just because of what we're doing as athletes academically, but it is eroding the entire institution. You know, look at what's going on in the world with regards to the American education system. A lot of this is trickling down to K through 12 and you know, primary and secondary education. All of that matters. We are falling behind the world in education, and we have to think about where does this all fit in the puzzle. So here's what Miles Brand, who was the president of the NCAA, he has since passed away. I actually got along with Miles very well. We disagreed very much. But when the APR came out, you know, we were in the Drake group, we were very adamant that this was going to increase cheating. This was going to just basically push academics more and more behind that curtain, just so universities can meet that number. Now, here was his response. That, you know, he said that this is a challenge. The challenges for people like the Drake group is that this will lead to increased cheating. Academic advisors, in a quest to keep student athletes eligible under this tougher scale, will, you know, cut corners, steer them into coursework that requires little work, blah blah blah. He said all that, and then 2 years later, the University of Arizona thing happened, and then Texas A&M came out that 80% of their football players were enrolled in poultry science. Now, I have nothing against poultry science. It's probably a fine major, but my guess is 80% of the football players did not want to be in poultry science. In fact, and it was a basketball player at A&M, because I think every one of their players was enrolled in poultry science at A&M in basketball. One of their basketball players said, you know, I didn't pick it. I was told that that's what I had to do because it was an easy major. It would keep me eligible. I had no choice, and I didn't want to learn anything about those chickens. Right? And yet there was very little outrage. All the things we predicted that Miles Brand said wouldn't happen was happening. And so we still were back in 1929, still doing a lot of the same things because we wanted to put that team on the field. We wanted to win those games. We wanted to generate the revenue. So I ask you, and this is what we can talk about in the question and answer session, is can it change? And it's great resistance. Because right now, and those of you, I think, economic theory, maybe you know about it, Mark, I always hear about 5% of the people in the world control 90% of the wealth or something like that. That's what's going on in college athletics, is you have very few people controlling the bulk of that wealth. And let's be honest, I've been bashing the current model. Let's be honest, for a few people, the model works pretty darn good. Right? They're making a lot of money. They're prestigious. They've got everything they want, a good life, you know, big house, cars, all those other things. Why would they want to change it? And then the other thing, and this is something that with, I say, the more general public, they'll talk to me and they'll say, yeah, I agree, what you're saying is awful, but gee whiz, come on. That's only a little bit of it, small percentage. The good absolutely outweighs the bad, which is not true. And then there's some who just choose to look the other way. They say, you know, I like going to the games, don't tell me, I'm not going to go in the kitchen, I'm not going to look at it. And then there's others, and this is where I put faculty. This is just like, you know what, something's got to be done, but you know what, it's just never going to happen. And that's what I get a lot from a lot of people, a lot of well-meaning, smart people who say, you know, Ridpath, you're a good guy, but it's not going to change. And I really tend to disagree with that. I've seen change happen a lot. I was told, probably when I was in high school, that a black man could never be president in America. You know, I was told a lot of things that I've seen happen. And I just look around socially and things that are going on in America right now. I was told a lot of things wouldn't happen. So I tend to get really stubborn when I hear that, because things can change if we want them to change. All right, so the future. Change is happening, which is great. There's a lot of things going on. You're probably aware of the burgeoning athletes' rights movement. The National Collegiate Players Association, Northwestern University athletes are attempting to unionize, which I think is great. I think athletes need to assert their rights. They're the primary stakeholders in this business, and quite frankly, they do not have a seat at the table. This is not about pay for play, quite frankly. It's about being able to say, you know what? We don't want to play a game on Tuesday night, and we shouldn't have to. Or how many of you watched Ohio State, Michigan last night? That game tipped off 9 p.m. in Columbus on a school night. Now, we used to say that back in high school. Can't do that, it's a school night. We don't seem to do that very much in college athletics anymore. And we want to try to bash ESPN, but I had a conversation with Burke Magnus, who has been very big at ESPN, college sports programming director. We had a night commission meeting, and he said something to me that was very profound. He said, we're not pressuring the universities to give us content at all. We're only taking what they're giving us. They're coming to us. You know, we might suggest, hey, Mid-American Conference, why don't you play on Tuesday night, a football game? The faculty at those institutions could absolutely stop that in its tracks if they wanted to. The administration of those institutions, but yet they're saying, oh wow, yeah, we need to play. We need to play on ESPN on a Tuesday night, which I'm sure you all look forward to, right? The Mid-American Conference game of the week. I'm sure you're all watching it, right? So if Ohio University's on, you can watch it, right? So all these things are going on, right? I think we're finding out that the value of the scholarship, especially if we're not delivering on the educational promise, if we're not delivering on that quote-unquote free education, then it's not compensation enough for what we're asking these athletes to do. Certainly at the Division I level, it's a full-time job, but we're also using them as marketing associates. We always say, I've heard Barry Alvarez say it, athletics is the front porch of Madison, Wisconsin. You know, it's the cleanest window to see the University of Wisconsin. Well, we always say that, right? So we're using these athletes to build up this front porch, but yet we're saying that they don't deserve anything beyond tuition, room, board, books, and fees. It's a nice financial aid package, but if they're not getting an education, if they're not getting what we say it is, that's a huge problem. And I do think the athletes deserve more. I'm not saying straight pay, but I do think they deserve access to the best scholarship available on that campus. And there are numerous scholarships at every public institution and private institution that do give stipends. I had one of them when I was in ROTC. I got an extra $300 a month. I don't think that's too much to ask. That's one thing we can do to help with the educational model. So again, that these students, if we're going to criminalize a student taking a bagel and cream cheese, yes, that was once an NCAA rule, believe it or not. If we're going to actually make a kid ineligible for getting an extra bagel, gee whiz, you know, let's at least have a reason to punish them than to say, look, we gave you $300 a month, why'd you go get the bagel? Got to at least have something to that level. There's also the Ed O'Bannon case, Ed O'Bannon versus the NCAA, which athletes are asserting their rights saying, hey, wait a second, you're making money off me. And you're making a lot of money off me. And quite frankly, I own my name, and I own my image, and you should not be able to make money off that without me getting compensated. Some of the older folks in the room, how do you remember Beverly Hillbillies? The old show, Beverly Hillbillies, right? One of my students at Mississippi State, her grandmother was Ellie Mae Clampett, Donna Douglas, the actress. And I had the great pleasure of meeting Donna Douglas one time down in Starkville, Mississippi. And she had told me that there's not a single 24-hour period in the span of the world that Beverly Hillbillies is not showing somewhere, in Japan or wherever, America. And she makes residuals off that. And athletes, professional athletes, make residuals off their appearances, certainly on game residuals, those types of things. Why are we not allowing college athletes to do that? Well, they're getting a free education. Well, I think there's an argument against that. Are they really getting that education? Also, the cost of higher education, the fact that a lot of these programs are institutionally subsidized, and the student fee and student fee revenues is astronomical. Some schools are charging an upwards of $2,000 to $2,500 of student fees that go directly to athletics. So you have students that are graduating now with an extra, $8,000 to $9,000 of debt, and we've talked about student loan debt and all those things ad nauseum. But I think it's appropriate to pay some fees towards athletics, but should you be paying, if the student fee is $2,700 per semester, should $2,500 of that be going to athletics, and you're not doing anything to generate revenue, nor will you be able to generate revenue. Certainly in the Mid-American Conference, it's not a conference that's going to generate TV revenue, bowl game revenue, those types of things. Lots of legal action is going on besides the O'Bannon case, the health and welfare of the athlete concussion case. The NCAA actually came out a couple weeks ago and said they have no legal duty to protect the athlete. I thought that was quite interesting, that an organization that claims, 450,000 students go pro in something other than sports now has no legal duty to protect the athletes. So they're getting hit from all sides. So something is going to happen. And I think it's better that we get ahead of the game and say, okay, how can we change this before the government or the courts force us to change? So what's going on from the faculty